Hi, good afternoon. We are very happy to start this table with all these marvelous people. And this table is about case of studies. Contrary to common belief, obsolescence is a real threat to digital art. To face such a challenge, many artists, curators, researchers have developed methodologies that help to preserve hundreds of works of art in collections around the world. In these collections here, understood as also as personal collections sometimes, right, Isabelle? And in this section, 4 presentations address topics related to documenting artifacts, curating, archiving, collecting, and preserving media art. Isabelle Arvers, artist, curator, activist. Ricardo Dal Farra, artist and researcher. Solimán López, artista. And Tania Aedo, artist, curator, director of museums, coordinator of a cathedral at the university, are here with us to an unbelievable team, right? To tell their stories. How did they made it up and give us the opportunity to adopt their methods and strategies. So we start with Isabelle. Isabelle, what do you keep? How do you select, curate, collect, preserve digital art? Please share with us your things and adventures, right?
Yeah. Thank you, Rejane, and thank you for all the team of 5 for this invitation. I'm really happy to be with you, and I'm gonna start my presentation. But thank you for this invitation. So happy to be somehow in Brazil. So I'm an art and game curator, and I will present you a project that I started 2 years ago, the Art and Game World Tour project, which is about decolonizing art and video game. First, I would like just to introduce a little bit myself. I'm an art and game curator, and I've been curating for almost 20 years art and video games. I started to interest myself in video games, not because I was a hardcore gamer, but because I understood that through a discussion with teenagers that games were becoming highly important, and they were like even able to shape our imaginary. So if they were able to shape our imagination, they were also able to manipulate people's minds. So I started to show the diversity of video games. I started to show and promote alternative, artistic, and experimental video games in order to show the other side of the gaming industry. But after 20 years of this project, I realized that I was mostly working in Western countries and with Western content. So I decided to embark in June 2019 in an art and game world tour with a focus on female, feminist, queer, and decolonial practices. And my point was to meet and interview artists using games as a medium, but also activists, game makers, curators, in order to be able to tell another kind of story of video games outside of the main path. During my journey, I also tried to multiply the possibilities of exchanges, collaborations with artists, but also I gave a lot of workshops, lectures, because the idea was really about exchanging and collaborating in the different countries I visited. And as I often say, I love mixes, I love exchanges, but I hate cultural ghettos. So the different objectives of this tour was first to be able to discover the culture, the history, or the politics of a country through its digital creation and through games. So that was my approach. And also, another objective was to promote diversity in terms of gender, sexuality, and also geographical origin in art and games. Again, as I already said, the point was to tell another story of video games, because I curated many retro gaming exhibitions, and we were only showing American, Canadian, and European consoles and content, and there is a story outside of this different regions. In terms of what do we collect, what do we keep, I also wanted to bring visibility to what has been made invisible by centuries of colonialism, and also the good and huge work of missionaries. And I wanted to collect other kind of stories, narratives, because I had this decolonial approach. I encountered many artists or game makers who are indigenous, who are very close to animism. So I got in touch with different types of rituals. And the point of this tour and all the exhibitions related to it, all the lectures, are to show other types of characters representation, and also to present more diverse game environments, to be able to play outside of Los Angeles or San Francisco. I have nothing against these two cities, but it's also nice to play in Nairobi, or to play in Accra, or to play in Rajasthan, for example, and also to be able to wander in different kind of landscapes. So this tour, in numbers, I visited 15 countries from the global south. I interviewed more than 250 artists or curator, activists or game makers. So in terms of collection, that could be. I also tried to disseminate while I was traveling the project I encountered thanks to press articles published online. And again, because I thought that exchanges and collaboration was important, I gave like 20 machinima workshops. So machinima is a movie made through video games or thanks to game engines, in different kind of context. For example, I gave a workshop in the Trans Foundation in Bogota, or in some activist spaces. And then during the tour, I also tried to collaborate and exhibit the artworks of artists. So for example, Technofeminismo was an exhibition only with women or transgender artists. In Game On, I mostly presented historical and political games made in Asia. And still about performance, still about collaboration, I also worked as a VJ with local musicians. And for example, in Argentina with Los Pasmoritas, we invented the concept of tropical play, trying to mix machinima, game art, but also games from Argentina. So it was a way also to directly show the content that I was meeting while I was in Buenos Aires, for example, to directly show it to the audience. And some online interventions as well in some festivals. And all the data collected is then, because I'm starting a PhD this year with Patricia Gouveia in Portugal at the Faculty of Fine Arts. So now I'm like analyzing all the data collected in order to elaborate a decolonial geography of art and video game creation. The point is really to try to highlight neglected territories and also to identify and valorize cultural, social, and economic circulations and transfer of content. So the idea is to create a corpus of video game creations and to analyze this corpus through representations, gameplay, condition of production, condition of diffusion. And right now, for example, writing an article about global and local markets and who is creating for the local market and in which conditions for an article for a book that will be published in France. And the result will be first publication. The idea is to co-write with, you tell me if I'm already out of the 10 minutes because it's okay. So there would be a publication. I would like to co-write it with writers from the different countries I visited. I don't want to write it just on my own. That's not the process. We are also aiming to an international symposium and to a nomadic international exhibitions in order again to be able to disseminate the work encountered. Just to give you like very, very few examples of the content that I, in a way, it's hard for me to say collect, but encountered. Replica is a game by a Korean independent game developer. The funny thing is that during the day he's a policeman and at night he's a game developer. And he produced one game about control and surveillance in Korea. He also produced a game about different criminal cases, but allowing him to give a lot of information about the current law in Korea. I also met this team, Game Breezy, in Korea. They did this game, the Wednesday, that deals about the comfort woman. So we could say that it's a post-colonialist game. The comfort woman were this woman, almost 100,000 women who were like captured by Japanese during the last World War, and they were sent in military camps to become prostitutes. So hopefully some of them survived, and this game is about one of the survivors who has the power of traveling in time and maybe be able to save a compass. Detention is a Taiwanese game, and it's a Taiwanese game. It's a survival horror game, but it happens during the White Terror. And what is interesting is that nowadays, because the new generation, of course, weren't there at that time and didn't know about that period, it is used as a tool in schools to better know this very hard period for people. And I could go on, but I guess, but that's the type of content that I was trying to highlight.
In our exchange, we could go further on that. So I'm inviting now Ricardo Dal Farra.
So I'm going to talk about archives, memory, and future. Let me start with this sentence by Jacques Attali from his book Noise, the Political Economy of Music. He wrote, all music, any organization of sounds is a tool for the creation or consolidation of a community, of a totality. And I think it's an important statement. I'm going to talk about electroacoustic music in particular, like mostly music and technological innovation in Latin America. And let me start with a few names from the many pioneers that were starting electroacoustic music in Latin America, like Brazil, Reginaldo Carvalho, Jorge Antunes, José de Oliveira, but there were many in each country for many decades. So when I'm saying many decades, some people started in the 50s, but even some people started already in 1940s. In the Hugh Davis catalog, published in 1967, already we can find like names like Mauricio Kagel from Argentina, that he was doing electroacoustic music already in the early 50s. And this is an important catalog showing that music, electroacoustic music from Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, and so many other Latin American countries were being created during the early 50s, and from then on up to today. If we see in the same catalog some music from Brazil from the mid-50s from Reginaldo Carvalho, and then we see also in the right something from Gilberto Mendes and Willy Correa de Oliveira. So at some point I was getting music for my own classes, then for doing concert, radio series, etc., etc. But why? Why? I think that there is a thing about history, memory, the problems we have as a region in Latin America, and also the good things happening in this region, and the ideas that has to do with preservation, documentation, and dissemination. And we have problems with many of these issues for a long time. And we were talking before about, yes, how is this happening, at least in some parts of the world. So the idea of having public access to the knowledge, and also, yes, like a personal archives becoming with public access, I think that was part of what was triggering my action. So as I was saying, like I was doing radio program, concert series, I was even given the possibility of publishing electroacoustic music by Latin American composers in important publications in the Northern Hemisphere, like in Computer Music Journal or Leonardo Music Journal. And usually, even if we live in the South, publishing in the North was bringing back to the South what we were doing, because it was much more easy to find what these publications were bringing to us, that just to know what was happening 2 blocks around our house was even easier to find it through a triangulation, I could say. So at some point, I had the opportunity to be in the first meeting of the DGR projects by UNESCO, and I was given the task to do, one of the first commission was to write about the electroacoustic music in Latin America. And then I was writing a lot. I mean, it was like 75,000 words in the English version. And I'm always saying without adjectives, were only names, dates, a lot of information without comments, or was not like a critique, was just facts. And these are the number of composers I was mentioning there from different countries. And when you see a plus sign, that's because not only composer, but I was also mentioning people doing like technological innovation. But all this was about words, was not about music. Where was the music? Because the music was being lost, in fact. So I had the opportunity to receive a grant as a researcher from the Daniel Langlois Foundation, and I was thinking to go for 4 months. At least became a little bit longer than 4 months. I can tell you the story after. But the idea was also preservation, documentation, and dissemination, I was saying before. And of course, there are a lot of topics to discuss. Just take one of these, the problem with definition, just starting with what I was doing a Latin American electroacoustic music collection. And well, what is Latin America? Just try to define Latin America and you will find a few problems around. Okay, so, but at some point, and after many decades, I put together this collection thanks to the help, support of the Daniel Langlois Foundation. So you can find, for example, Juan Blanco from Cuba. He was producing more than 100 pieces, And he started in the early 60s, but most of his work were lost, or I mean, if not lost, very, very difficult to find. Even he was creating the predecessor of the mellotron that later became the sampler. But who knew about this? These graphics were lost for many, many, many years. So I'm happy to show it now here. Or Raúl Pavón from Mexico, he's an engineer, but he was also producing the prototype of this synthesizer, or Fernando von Reichenbach in Argentina, producing a lot of innovation and devices that were really amazing. So César Bolaños from Peru, working with electroacoustic music, mixed pieces, and also computer music. So there are a lot of things to discuss, and I'm just having a few points here. But if I'm moving a little bit further in this, just mentioning some people from Brazil, like we can find in this database, Jorge Antunes from Brazil. He was a very important composer, conductor, also very active in the political milieu. José de Oliveira, living in Rio, or Vânia Dantas, that all these people doing really amazing work and very important in Latin America, but not very well known, except some cases outside their own countries or the region. In some cases, like yes, but not all of them, because I was compiling 1,723 pieces, I mean, of music from almost 389 composers from Latin America. That's a lot of people. And I was bringing all of this that was in my house in Argentina. So I was bringing all this in the plane, and I was starting to work and to put together this database that at the end was about, these are the number of compositions by country that you can find in the Daniel Langlois Foundation Latin American Electroacoustic Music Collection. And this is the timeline where you can see more or less how many pieces from each decade you can find there. So let me yes, this is from Brazil. From Brazil, we have like 39 composers producing Latin electroacoustic music. But yes, some of them very well known, like I was mentioning, Jorge Antunes or José de Oliveira, but not all of them were able to promote their works outside the region or their country, not even sometimes in Latin America as a whole. Today, you can access all these works. The database is accessible, most of the works. If not, you need to send an email to the foundation and you can access all the works. If not, they're publicly available. There are like 500 pieces, a little bit more than that. And just to round up in my last minute, let me say something that also Jacques Attali was saying years ago. He said that nothing essential happens in the absence of noise. Let me finish with this. I think it's an important point because I was talking a lot about music, and you know, there's some discussion when we talk about electronic arts. Sometimes people forget that electroacoustic music is electronic art, and that we started with this well before many other forms of electronic art. So I think it's important to bring these ideas. And also, let me close with this sentence again from Jacques Attali when he wrote, "Today, our sight has dimmed. It no longer sees our future, having constructed a present made of abstraction, nonsense, and silence. Now we must learn to judge a society more by its sounds, by its art, and by its festivals than by the statistics." Thank you so much. This was a little bit of an introduction about the Latin American Electroacoustic Music Collection. Obrigado, Rejane, Paula, and File for the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. Amazing. So now I will invite Solomon.
Thanks so much for the invitation, for having me on board this super table. I'm super excited to present you one of the project that it's part of my life as artist, as human, as everything. Is the Hard Disk Museum. I would like to go further on the project, but finally I would like to share with yours the idea of building a bio-museum. And now finally at the end of the presentation, the small presentation, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. So from the very beginning of my practice, I was a little bit obsessed about the idea of files and exactly the name of this festival. I had been working a lot with this concept and with this matter of the unique form of let's say the basic of the production of the contemporary artist. Everything is based on files, not only in the contemporary art or in art practice, but in many other different things in our life. I am a multimedia artist. I'm the director of innovation in the Escuela Superior de Arte y Tecnología in Valencia, Spain, and also the director of my own studio, the Updated Art Studio, where we run the Hard Disk Museum. The first time I saw the Hard Disk Museum, it was in Valencia in 2015, but it was ideated, conceived in 2013 in a residency in Santiago de Compostela, where I proposed the idea of having a hard drive for storing the artworks of different artists. The concept of the museum is just the idea of having a unique repository of art to give answer to the question or answer for the new temporal codes of humanity, artistic production, and cultural heritage. Obviously, it's not only this, it's also a tribute to those files that are the base of the contemporary creation. Basically, the project is based in the idea of storing digital art and unique files into a hard drive. A hard drive in this case is it's also an industrial one. It's nothing special with the object, but obviously the content is totally curated. Now there is a lot of content. We are more than 100 artists from many different countries. We have different versions from online to AR, from different devices, from different supports to new media. We have artists from many different countries, as I said. Me in the museum, I am not an artist. I am not exposing myself in the museum. I work mostly more in the section of the founder and also in the direction and the strategy of the complete project. So it's, for me, it's like a sort of son, like a sort of part of my family, and also the idea of having a super community around a project created by myself. So you can find artists as Roger Bilder, you can find Camille Jacquard, Sabina Raté, David Gies, Vladimir Bubich, Klaus Furnis. I don't know, there's a lot of them system, there's a lot of important artists that are part of the Hard Disk Museum, and the collection, it's all time growing up day by day. So the story of the museum, we have been participating in many different venues and festivals and art centers, at the Kronos Art Center, the Festival in Brazil several years ago. We have also did our TEDx exhibition. This is, for example, the virtual reality format that we developed in 2016. This is in Arco in Spain. This is in another museum, in the Fine Art Museum in Tenerife. This is my presentation in TEDx in Valladolid, for example. Many other ones, for example, here in the Arts in Santa Monica in Barcelona, or here in the Kronos Art Center in Shanghai, China. I mentioned already how we can approach ourselves to the museum. There is different strategies that we are working with. Obviously now the digital has many more importance than ever, because now we are with the COVID, and also the museum has now talking about this sort of bridge of communication with many other artists all around the world, with no time or space limitation. We have the concept of the space. The space is the platform where we have the permanent collection. You can visit. We are all time updating and uploading new artwork from different artists that are involved in the project. And also we have different exhibitions that are temporary ones. For example, now we are preparing two new ones that are going to be online in the next couple of weeks. And also we are planning to launch an exhibition in the 1st of May in the street in Madrid, in collaboration with a brand of external and digital signage publicity. My point today is just to send a new concept of museum that is, for me, is like a sort of preview of the museum of the future. What means a hard drive in the future of the collection? What means the hard drive of the future of storing or stocking or saving digital art? And here comes the science. I had been working with Dina Zielinski for a long time period, almost one year and a half, to create a first museum on history safe into genetic code. So our museum from the very beginning is a museum that is based in binary code, because finally everything is digital. Obviously, as you know, now the genetic code has been developed a lot in the many different projects, as the Brazilian artist Eduardo Cac has done. And we made not an essay to be the first one of anything, but just a question of like a sort of romantic piece. Why romantic piece? Because for me, this action, this performance, this concept museum becomes the first museum where the artworks are really touching each other, are really in the same material, are really the same, sharing the same composition in a way. They are, all of them are genetic code as ourselves. So I close the circle of preservation, of production. I close, let's say, like this sort of looping of creativity, bringing to the community an example of how we can collaborate in a very deeply way, creating digital art, storing digital art, saving digital art, sharing digital art, and obviously imagine the future of preservation, the future of a new hard drive that is not spinning, but includes the genetic code of a museum. And it's that this is exactly the next point that we are going to do the next month in Zurich. We have a collaboration with another laboratory to introduce the genetic code into a piece of PLA plastic 3D printed to reconstruct a version of a disc that is, as I said, is not spinning, but save the content of our actual culture. And that's a general review of the project. I will be more than happy to talk more deeply in the next conversations.
Thank you very much, Solimán. I'm inviting Tania.
I will talk about 3 archival initiatives and a prototype. The first archival project is Ways of Hearing. Well, I will enlist the 3 of them just to see what we are going to navigate now. Ways of Hearing, which was an exhibition, a book, and an archive that started in 2018, and it's an ongoing project. Ready Media Towards an Archaeology of Media and Invention in Mexico from 2010, and Centro de Documentación Príamo Lozada, Centro CDPL, which inaugurated in 2015, and to end with prototypes for navigating a contingent future, just as an hypothesis or as an idea of where can media art or what can media art be useful for in these times of contingencies. So Modos de Oír was an exhibition that started as a seminar in 2017 between Exteresa Arte Actual and Laboratorio Arte Alameda with 8 curators. It was an exhibition on around 3 decades of sound art in Mexico. And it has a book and also an archival project. The main focus of the exhibition was an inquiry on sound practices and sound thinking, sound in its relation to voice, to material, sound as a phenomena, as trace, as inscription. There is a long tradition in Mexico of practices, art practices related to sound. So one of the main parts of this project was or is this archive, which is more than a repository. And what I stress about this project and also about the other 2 projects I will talk about is the curatorial collective form of doing things. No, if that can respond, what do you keep or what would I keep? I would keep the projects that have been curated collectively, and Modos de Oír is one of them. And it started with around 300 pieces. The first ingestion was 120 pieces, which were part of the research that these 8 curators have made. And some of these pieces weren't able to get into the exhibition for technical or curatorial reasons, maybe mainly because of space and technical reasons, because of sound is so ubiquitous. So the archive is open. The parts of this archive is authors, artworks, texts, and register. If you're an author and are interested in putting your work, your sound art work in this archive, it is possible. There is a committee that will select which pieces may go into the archive. And also, if you're a theoretician and want to participate, also you can upload your text. The book was edited by a wonderful team, Tumba la Casa, an editorial team. And the name of the book, the title of the book is Modos de Oír, una heterofonía sobre arte y sonido en México, or ways of hearing, ways of listening, ways of hearing, and heterophony about art and sound in Mexico. And it is constructed as a conversation. It is very close to what happened in this seminar that started in 2017. And this is Ready Media, towards an archaeology of media and invention in Mexico. It also was an exhibition, a book, and an archive, and it was also collectively curated by 8 curators. And the book, this is a part of the index of the book, comprises 20-something essays, and it was edited by Carla Jasso and Daniel Garza Usabiaga. Carla Jasso was the second curator at Laboratorio Arte Alameda, the second chief curator after Príamo Lozada, and then the museum opened to invited curators. The archival part of this project of Ready Media towards an archaeology of media and invention in Mexico is was gathered in a set of DVDs, and it was sent to institutions, curators, documentation centers, museums around the world. So it's in a format, in an old format now, DVD, but it is in a way it is preserved by the museums or centers of documentation which received it. And also, when in the beginning, when we were curating and conforming this part of the project, we were aware that maybe, or it was also for sure that people would copy the DVDs, so that when this format as DVD went obsolete, maybe many people have the copies of this. So the main lines of this project were experimental music, art, poetry, and sound experimentation, Familiar Memorable, which was a curatorship by Grace Quintanilla, and it was a program of young digital native people, and Overflow, Mechanicity and Obsolescence in Current Media Art by Juan Pablo Anaya and Gabriela Mendez-Cota, which was a study on mechanics inside or hidden behind the digital. Cine Povera by Jesse Lerner, Notes on a Review of Video Curatorships by Randy Vergara, Experimental Contemporary Audiovisual in Mexico, and Voiceover, which was a set of short documentaries that I had the pleasure of curating with Carla Jasso. And this is how the set of DVDs looked, and some of the screens, just for you to see some of the landing pages of the DVD. The voiceover short documentary were about the characters or the artists that were profiled were Sara Minter, Ariel Gusic, Jimena Cuevas, Arthur Henry Fork, and Arcangelo Constantini. And this is Priamo Lozada Documentation Center and was inaugurated in 2015. The mission is to keep, to collect, organize, preserve, promote, and to be a consultation service. And it also holds the personal archive of the first curator, founder curator of Laboratorio Arte Alameda, Priamo Lozada, and it comprises 6,000 units between photographs, prints, books, and great literature. It has an stabilization cabin for analog and digital materials, so not all of the Priamo Lozada's archive have been digitized, but it is being held inside the stabilization cabin until it is digitized. This digitization started in 2018, and yes, this is more or less like the number of units. It's there are books, magazines, dossier, analog and digital formats, and one of the most important things is here in the right. There are the 20 years of history of Laboratorio Arte Alameda, and one of the things that is happening now is that they this year are starting the unboxing of all the exhibitions. And I think I will go back because I came too fast to the end. But for me, if one of the questions is about the future or the present of digital art, I would say that media art is acting, at least this is the way I am looking at media art now, as a repository of knowledge and of warnings for navigating a contingent future. So this is the last project I'm working on, and at Cátedra Maxau at the National University in Mexico, and it's called Prototypes for Navigating a Contingent Future. So I think that there are many topics that media art have been pointing to, topics as pervasive media and our relationship to technologies, so that all of these topics may be seen as a huge repository that we can use not only in a critical but also in an instrumental way. So this is a project that will be a laboratory for young people. It's not directed to media art or audience, or for artists. Artists that are included, of course, but it's a transdisciplinary project that will use media art as an inspiration, and as a repository of knowledge and warnings.
I am so pleased to be seeing the two tables. First table, we had Manuela Novo telling us how could we think about putting up the projects together and new ways of archiving, let's say. And I think you are all doing outputs that are very out of the scene. I mean, something that's new. And in one way, I am so pleased also because I feel that we are all artists here. So it might be one of the reasons why the outputs are so out of this planet. I have to Ricardo one question that's very precise. I'll make that question and invite Paula Perissinotto to join us in this conversation. So the first question is Walter Miranda Filho, and he wants to know the name of the video about Jorge Antunes. If you have that link, if it's easy to reach.
Okay, yes, the name is Polêmica e Modernidade. You can find it on the web. Yes, just put Jorge Antunes, Polêmica e Modernidade, and you will find it. Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Another question from Clarissa. I think it could fit all of you in one way because, especially Isabelle, the question talks about what are the main tools to connect works of marginalized regions to a worldwide network of digital arts. So how do you enroll people that's out of the picture, right?
So it was not like super easy task, but and also during the pandemic, talking about traveling and doing a world tour can be perceived as a bit like tricky, but that's true that thanks to the travel, to be able to really meet in person people that I couldn't even contact before because of the lack of English or French, the possibility to communicate in English, but also trying to find emerging artists. You have to be like connected with universities or schools, or and internet is wonderful to connect, but sometimes it has its limits. So also I decided to go in countries where I didn't know anyone, not always, but most of the countries I visited, I didn't know anyone. And I was very, very supported, I have to say, by the social networks, because it really helped me to get like suggestions of people to meet that, I mean, even if I have like quite a good network of feminists, of activists, or queer activists around the world, sometimes it was not enough. So I was very helped also by social networks. Yeah, I have to say that, it helped. And yeah, I don't know if I answered that, but and yeah, the activist network is really helpful as well.
I think like we could then address Solimán, because many people want to know, how do you curate such a art museum? The hardest museum, right?
It is a good question, because from the very beginning of the project, it was like it was ideated, you know, as an artist running a space, and everything is like it's like super, let's say, infantile in a way, you know, because you begin to make something like this, and finally 1 year, another year, and you receive an email from one artist from I don't know where that they want to roll the museum, and finally you have to decide how to deal with this sort of demand to be part of the project. And at this point, I suggest myself a question. I ask myself, what will be my role in this? And I detest this idea of choosing artwork, because I feel myself that I am all the time exposed to this sort of ecosystem, to be chosen, you know, all the time to be part of a programming of a festival. So I refuse this invitation to choose the artist, and I give this this responsibility to curators and advisors that are around the project. So we have like guest curators that are involved with the project, and once we receive and apply to the museum, we resend the information to those curators. But at the same time, me as an artist, I'm quite well connected with many other different artists, and also normally, you know, we are present, and there are a lot of people who approach myself with different ideas, and I move some pieces in the museum if I think the artwork brings something, offers something new to the collection. Anyway, the form, it's open 24 hours, 365 days per year. So you can go to the harddiskmuseum.com web, and you can apply your artwork to be uploaded.
And now one thing that I want to address to Tania and Ricardo, if we consider an example as radical as the Hard Disk Museum, people here want to know, is it worth it to have an exhibition from these works? Do we need to exhibit works like that are online? Is there a reason for?
Tania, if you want to start.
Sorry, I think I may not got the question. To exhibit?
The question is exactly, Clarissa made a question that is like, what can an exhibition add to an archive that's already available and accessible to the public online? So if you take the case of Hard Disk Museum, an exhibition would add to that, to experience those works. Is it necessary or not?
No, yes, I get the point. I think that these two exhibitions transformed into an archive, or the archive was the result of the exhibition and then a project that started growing, but they were not thought as an archive and then put them into an exhibition. But also I think that, yes, in a sense, these two spaces that I was addressing, Laboratorio Arte Alameda and Exteresa Arte Actual, both are temples, old temples. So the gathering of archiving or artworks from the contemporary times with those buildings, of course, result into relationships that you cannot see if you look at the archive in your screen, no? Yeah, for curatorial reasons. But the order was the opposite, no? It was first an exhibition, then transformed into an archive.
Yeah. Well, in my case was different, because the idea of the Langlois Foundation in particular was first, I was following the idea of first to preserve the material that was getting lost. So first to preserve, then to document as much as possible the works you are preserving, and then the dissemination. And then if you want, it's like, yes, if you have it online, it looks like it is open to everyone. Well, but there are many things that are like overlapping or not. So sometimes you have the material online and you think that it's reaching everyone, and it's not always the case. So I think that this project was triggering a lot of local different projects, sometimes online, and sometimes also like in the physical material world. So this was starting projects that were becoming like books, CDs, CD series, and exhibitions of different kinds, that I think that all of these things are supporting each other, really. Like, so I think it's positive, because yes, many people know the works online, but some people just know about the works online because they saw something on an exhibition, or they saw a CD, etc., etc. So I think it's recursive in some way, but it's helping a lot. Yes, one to each other.
I know, for example, that Isabelle is traveling, but at the same time exhibiting, selecting, exhibiting, archiving, and talking about it to spread, right, Isabelle? Do you work with any institution, like? I know you have the interviews and all that. Maybe it would be nice to talk about your dream.
I mean, I was also thinking when I was listening to you about the possibilities of mixing exhibition and archiving. I was also thinking when I did these VJ performances, it was also a way to immediately disseminate some content instead of archiving. And about the institutions, so I was supported by the French Institute, by the Ministry of Culture, by the National Center of Plastic Arts. But now I am like seeking for a production company, because I would also like to create a hybrid documentary. And actually today I was talking with a producer who is working a lot with RT TV, this Franco-German channel. Let's see if it will work. But right now, it seems that France is not really like super interested in the project. I didn't have any proposal or any. So let's see. Yeah, I'd be happy to to work with a big institution, because there is enough content for really big exhibition. I mean, at least like more than 100 works between the artists, the games, we'll see. Who knows?
Yeah,
I hope it could help.
I see, like, I know that Ricardo also does performances, and so when you work with performances, the public is something that contributes a lot for the work. It's part of the work, especially participatory art as well. So putting it in an archive, this is one of the questions. How can we kind of dry a project so little that we can keep it inside of the genetic code, and then drop some water, and then we have like an installation which is 20 meters long. So how can we do that? And that is also a question that I want to address, Solimán, because somebody here is asking about more details about this, another radical idea, right? Genetic museum. And how do you, can you explain a little bit further this idea, Solimán, please?
Well, conceptually, my goal was obviously to send a message about the future of preservation of digital art and data in a general way, and to propose different ways to make it happen. And at the same time, I think the response of all those questions it's based in our same material, in ourselves. This is, let's say, like the poetical side of the project. And technically, if someone is interested, finally, the museum, it's based in binary code, and our genetic code is based in double binary code. That means 4 elements. So in Harvard several years ago, they reached the goal to make this synthesis of a genetic chain, thanks to a video of Muybridge, this video of the horse running. And finally, they reached the way to create a synthesis of a digital file based in ones and zeros. So now, at this point, we are able to reconstruct, to create a genetic code artificially. So we did exactly the same process. We make a synthesis of the hard disk museum content, all the metadata of the museum, to rebuild, if needed, the museum as it is. The idea is to have like a sort of one time per year, have a stockage, a backup of the museum safe in genetic code, and also give me a new material to make different ideas. I have a new project. I'm looking for partners also we are going to produce these 16 small pieces of plastic with the material inside. So the idea is to distribute those different materials all around the world, just in case something happens, someone could find it. This is a small object, maybe buried, I don't know where, or maybe in the, you know, in the deepest ocean. You know, it finally is like every time I'm playing with the metaphor, I'm playing from the art with the museum.
Perspective, yeah. And Solimán, one thing, how accessible is that? That's my other question, because it's a very abstract and a very sophisticated idea. It's amazing, but how accessible is it to the human sense?
I mean, the content you said, the content of
How can I access the content of the genetic code?
Yeah, finally you have to make the inverse process. You have to go to the laboratory, you have to extract the DNA, and then once you extract the DNA, you can reconstruct the binary code, and finally you will get exactly the same point zip that we have already synthesized. So it finally is like a process of going forward and going back. So that's
so let me welcome Paula, because she's in. I'm sure she's curious about things.
No, I was wondering actually, because the hard disk museum, it's more a collection than an archive, right? So I mean, of course, a collection ends up being an archive, but it's another process of put things together. Like Ricardo, Tania, and Isabelle also is a work that it's going on. But even if I think about file, we are talking about documents and how to treat these documents to survive in a long term. And I was, this is just a question more maybe for Ricardo, Tania, and Isabelle to think about, if it's like, for Ricardo, for example, that he's been working for such a long time on this. How are you planning to update this, like in the online today? You know, we've been heard Morgana before, and she was very generous when she just said that all the big institutions are connected by the weak platform. And I think this is a very interesting strategy to put all this work that everybody does isolated, connect somehow, because what it's like, what we gain from all this work to do it for, you know, just our small network and not to get connected to the entire network. So I think for the next step now, it's to be connected with everyone. So if there is a plan for all of you in that sense, I would like to hear.
Let's see, there are many issues there. So in this case, for example, in the collection, the pieces are coming from 1957 to 2007. So because now are much more available, and you can go to the internet and everything is much more available. The idea was to preserve what was being lost. About preserving in the long term, in the long time, yes, I mean, the Langlois Foundation is supported by Daniel Langlois himself. So if Daniel Langlois decides for any reason to stop supporting, not my collection, but the Foundation for Art, Science, and Technology, that could be a problem. So I think it is important for many places to get institutional support, because that could be the case. In terms of expanding the idea, I think that what these kind of projects are doing is triggering other things. Now the Latin American electroacoustic music is very well known over the world. Before was only a few people known, the people that were able to reach other places, mostly Western Europe and North America, that were being able to show their work. Now everyone knows about a lot of people in Latin America doing electroacoustic music. So more than expand, I would say the idea is to preserve what we already have and not getting that lost. That already is very important. Just as an addition, the Langlois Foundation itself, I mean, not only about this collection, but the amount of work that is there in terms of material of all kind of electronic art is unbelievable, unbelievable. So it is on the web, but just for me that I was working there in my own project, I mean, I was exploring the web every day and I was discovering new things all the time. So I can go on forever about this because it's a hot topic, yes.
And sorry. I would say about this kind of archives, like, for example, Centro de Documentación Príamo Losada, that because of how the institutional ecology in Mexico is organized, and because we have like a long tradition of archiving and of preservation, but we have like bigger problems than media art, right? It's not like the main interest of institutions historically or in terms of archaeology. But so what I think is that you have to start the projects, even though it is not the best conditions to do that, even though sometimes the archive is not in the best platform, but some of at least part of the project is connected to the global, so that the project is present and that you do constant activations and constant production of knowledge, so that when all that is a unending process, right? To have everything digitized, but that if that process is going and some part of the project is connected to the global and you are constantly activating, I think that would be what I would do. I'm not at Laboratorio Arte Alameda anymore, but that's I think the philosophy of, and also I think something very, very important, at least in Mexico, is all the young people, the new generations that are at the documentation areas or educational areas of museums. So that they are putting their heart on the project, so that will keep them going, even if the institution is not so interested in media art practices.
I wanted to ask you, Tania, what is the tool the museum is using to publish all the archives that have been digitized?
The Centro de Documentación Príamo Losada is not online. It's not online. That's why, for example, if you go to the YouTube channel of Laboratorio, they are unboxing in the next few weeks the Mona Hatoum exhibition, which was one of the first exhibitions that Príamo Losada curated. So that's one of the mechanisms, but the archive is not online.
Because I was also about to say that one of the problems with archiving is also how you give access to these archives, and the question also of proprietary tools. We all know about the end of Flash and the issue about all the content made with Flash, but not only content like artworks made with Flash, but also all the possibilities to access to content through Flash player. And so that's why I was asking you which tool was used or is used, because I guess that maybe open source technology can also help to make a big network between different institutions, but also to help the interoperability of the different techniques used to publish and index archives. I don't know.
Tania, is there, sorry, but it's just, is there any plans to have the archive online, or there is no plan?
No, there are plans, at least from the National Fine Arts Institute, to put online all the archives, the contemporary art museums archives. Some of them are, But yes, for laboratorio is also something important, and there's a plan to do that. But yes.
Does it work with a university as well, together?
No, there are centers for preservation in the institute, so they are collaborating with it's a CENIDIAP, the Center for Research in Plastic Arts or in Visual Arts, and all the norms and the have their advice.
And what kind of support do they have? The state support?
Yes, laboratorio is a public institution. It's an institution that is part of the government. So also the archive, as it's now constituted, because before it was named Priamo Lozada Documentation Center, it was like not configured as such. So now it's part of the institution, and by law, the institution needs to preserve it, not to put it online, but needs to preserve it.
I would like to address a question because I think it will involve everybody in the things we are discussing now. And it's like a link to what Oliver Brown said about a planetary initiative where we would all be able to exchange all the data we are collecting and maybe design a common language to do it. So I want you all to dream with a solution, if possible. What would you think would be great to do? Or is there a solution that you see now or not? Or should we put an effort? Where should we put our efforts to make it happen? To make all the archives, let's say what Ricardo developed, what Solimán is doing, what Isabelle is researching and collecting, what Tania has been doing. How can we kind of find a way of dialogue and interact and exchange through APP? Maybe already Morgan in the previous table told us that all the museums are using now the Media Week, and that's been great, and that they are meeting every month to discuss things together, big museums now. So how could we try to get the train, I mean, to embark in that idea?
Can I start?
Please, Ricardo.
It's just, I think it's a really good idea. I think it's very important. Of course, it's not that easy to do it. And also, I think that even if, I mean, we need to be consequent between thoughts and actions, because I think that still, well, I'm very happy that this is happening, like hosted in Brazil, Latin America, because still many of the things are being discussed in the Northern Hemisphere. And even if we hear like voices talking about this needs to be more open, sometimes there is still a strong colonialism in the way this is approached. And now I hear colleagues talking about other countries or out of Europe or out of North America in a way that the same people were not saying like very few years ago, or including part of electronic art that before were not even considered as part of electronic art. So I'm happy this is changing, but I think that still we need to make a strong effort in terms of not supporting this idea of colonialism, where yes, Europe or North America is giving us the opportunity to people living in other places to be part of. I hope I'm clear.
Yes.
Thanks.
Solimán, please.
I think that we have already the example of the conception of general web. I think the solution will be could be the hyperlink of everything. I think that that should be a possible solution to hyperconnect the metadata of everything in a conceptual way. We have the example of Google. Google has tried, and Google has reached the super network for connecting everything with just one page. So I think that could be this kind of practice should be possible, just to to create a sort of metadata in all the files that are shared in different collection and different archives, and then to have like a sort of hyper web to connect all those information thanks to those hyperlinks. I think that maybe could be a possible solution. And obviously, once everything is connected, you can put it wherever you want. You can put it in virtual reality, you can put it in augmented reality, you can put it in many other kind of solution. No? And also, this question, we already talked about this with Ricardo in another meeting that we had. Also to recover the low technology. I think that there is a super different communication devices that could help us to create this sort of network. For example, the radio is a super media to connect everything in a very easy way, and also to broke this globalization of information, because as Ricardo says, there is a sort of colonization in many different environments of contemporary art and new media. And with this low tech, everybody could access to this information. Maybe this is like a sort of dream, but let's see.
Yeah, I would add open source technology, interoperability. I was thinking about archive.org that is somehow also a quite good initiative, and even if it comes from a certain part of the world. And so interoperability, low tech, I think is also a very good point. And then I was thinking about, for example, the initiative of Gallica, who is trying to integrate and many different archives, and to give access to different archives. And so for the moment, there is certain big libraries behind, but it would be even more interesting that it could be like an international initiative. And so Gallica is perhaps, but it's also connected through metadata and encapsulated.
But Isabelle, if I have a question for you. I mean, you were doing a mapping of all these video games from different places, and how are you? Are they connected in between? I mean, do they know each other? I mean, how is it? Is it organized in a way that the mapping is seen by everybody who's mapping it? How it's organized exactly?
So, for example, I tried to create some meetings of different game makers in the world, but it still has to be done, because not everybody knows each other. But what was very interesting for me is that most of the person I met were already part of an international network, because some of the countries are trying to push the game industry by sending game developers. So for the moment in Europe or in the US, but let's say half of them knew each other, and then the rest no. But if we take the example of some countries in Africa, let's say in Togo or in Ghana, where there are no training in video games, most of the person are accessing to content online, and for sure they might not have a wide vision of what already exists. And then let's say that almost 30% of the games or game maker I encountered were not published. So it's hard also to know something that is not online or not public already. And for example, I showed you before the game, the Wednesday, it was just published some months ago. So during 2 years, I was showing it, but it was not accessible. Another game found in Taiwan was forbidden by China because there was a meme inside mocking the president. So after one week on Steam, the online platform for video games, it was banned by China. So for that reason, it was hard to know this game as well. So yeah, no, and one of one of my aim was also to connect and to create different kind of networks. For example, between Indonesia and Colombia, because it's not a country, but in the archipel of Indonesia, there are a lot of collectives. And I found that it was almost the same structure for artists than what I found in Colombia. A lot of collective of artists, and so I tried to connect and to make, yeah, different type of lines. But I still need to work on it because it still has to be done.
Yeah, another step. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tania, can you tell us about a dream situation? And I will ask Paula too.
I'm thinking a lot these days on contingency, as you know, like to displace the category of the contemporary and put in its place the contingency. And so that for me gives us like a different view on these topics of media art, because yes, as I said, no, it can be seen as an enormous repository of knowledge, not just in the critical sense, but also in the instrumental one. So my dream would be like everybody digging in this kind of archives and looking for some, if not answers, but knowledge and warnings and interesting things, like to invent the new future that is like that. It's like it's not completely, but very uncertain, no, and contingent.
That's beautiful. Paula, what about you?
Well, my dream now, well, the dream that it's appropriate to share here, it's exactly to put all this work we have done in 20 years and share with the, you know, all this documentation to become something shareable with as many people as possible, and to just, you know, keep making noise and being alive, not to leave things behind, you know. So the most difficult thing is really to now to make decisions of which path to take. So I dream now to take the right path.
So 1 minute each, and we have to finish, unfortunately. I will ask you guys also. Another thing is that all the students and people that are listening to our conversation, they are asking for the websites and all this, and I'm asking you if we could share it on the platform. The videos are going to be on the platform, and after File will produce a document with all these talks. So it'll be amazing to, this is the beginning of a dream, right, already. Mm-hmm. So I will start from Tania. Last words, Tania, please.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and my last words would be for the artists to think about in long term, but not but sustainable. for the projects, because now, as the example you gave, like to keep something and put water and then have the big installation there. I mean, I think this is a time for thinking different, thinking more sustainable in that way.
Isabelle?
Oh, thank you. Maybe a little bit of self-promotion, but as I mentioned many times, open source technology to give access to archives, maybe to use some tools like Pleiad. So Pleiad is a tool, an open source technology that helps to publish and index records online. And I think it's important to give access and without proprietary technologies. So that would be my last word for giving an access to archives online.
Solimán?
First of all, I would like to give my whole support to the country, the Brazilian country, because the COVID and the rest of the world that we are passing by for a very complicated moment. And I think technology should be used, properly in this moment, because we have the opportunity to use it, but we have to use it in a good way. We have to take care about our data. We have to take care about many different things. So I propose a critical point of view of everything that is happening around us in technology, because everything should be analyzed properly. And also my aim, my wish to the future is obviously that technology is something that will stay with us, and we have to really assume it, and we have to be creative. We are more globalized than ever, but at the same time we have more opportunities than ever to use, as Isabelle says, open source to give to the community different solutions to be better.
Ricardo?
Yes. Well, thank you again for the invite. I'm supporting totally what Solimán was saying about the time we are living, and something specific about these projects, taking what Paula was saying about making noise. I think that's what we need to do, and it applies very well for a collection about electroacoustic music. But it's mostly that I know that this collection has been triggering other projects, and that's what you want to see for the future, that this was triggering other projects, local projects, international projects, and also that these kind of initiatives, I know, has changed some people's life, and even the artists and also their families. I know that for sure. And for me, that's very important. So I'm usually talking about real projects for real people. It's not just something abstract that is in the cloud and online. It touched really people that were lost and that suddenly became their work to life again after maybe 30 or 40 years. So that's, for me, is looking back, but it's really looking to the future. Thank you.
Wonderful. Paula, do you want to say something?
That's very inspiring, Ricardo. And well, I want to thank you all. I mean, in name of the whole FILE team. I mean, it's very grateful that we are having this opportunity, that you were available. And so thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to share with you soon the documents that we will create. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, FILE. Thank you all. I love you.
Thank you, Rejane.
And it's an honor to be here dreaming with you. Thank you. I learn every day more just being close to you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was great.